Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe to keep me motivated to tell more interesting stories. Now, let's get started. It started with a paper gown. You know, the kind crinkly, barely tied in the back and designed to make you feel like a cold burrito with a stethoscope. I was sitting on that exam table, feet dangling like a nervous teenager, trying not to make too much noise every time I shifted and the gown rustled. The doctor came in with that clipboard smile, polite but tense, and said, "Let's talk numbers." My blood pressure was up. My cholesterol was doing jazz hands. And the scale? Well, let's just say it was doing the most. I half laughed and made a joke about how muscle weighs more than fat, even though I hadn't seen a dumbbell in 5 years. The doctor didn't laugh. Then he said the words no one ever wants to hear. "You're pre-diabetic." It was like time paused. The fluorescent lights felt a little too bright, the walls a little too white. Pre-diabetic. It sounded like I was on the edge of a cliff, toes curling over the edge, wind at my back. One gust away from falling into something irreversible. And here's the kicker, I wasn't even surprised. Somewhere deep down I'd known. I'd felt the creeping fatigue, the stiffness in my joints, the occasional chest flutter when I climbed stairs too fast. But I'd brushed it off, blamed the kids, the job, the stress, the pandemic, the pizza, you name it. But now, it was real. Medical. Written in ink on that stupid clipboard. And it hit me hard that I wasn't 25 anymore. Heck, I wasn't even 35. I was over 40. And my body wasn't going to just bounce back because I drank a smoothie and did one half-hearted yoga class from YouTube. So I went home, and like any self-respecting person in denial, I stopped for fries on the way. One last hurrah, I told myself. One final crispy indulgence before I got serious. Except that night, something shifted. I was sitting in bed, stomach full, joints aching, scrolling on my phone, and I saw a post from someone I hadn't thought about in years, an old classmate. She looked fantastic, lean, glowing, genuinely happy. The caption read, "Down 40 pounds at 45, stronger than ever." And instead of feeling inspired, I felt ashamed. Not because she looked good, but because she'd chosen to fight, and I'd been coasting. Making excuses, pretending my body would just forgive me. I didn't sleep well that night, not because of the fries, although yeah, but because my mind was racing. What if I kept ignoring this? What if I did nothing? What if I ended up sitting in another exam room, but this time with actual diabetes? Or worse? That's when I remembered something from a documentary I saw years ago. Back in ancient Greece, physicians believed balance was the essence of health. Not just physical balance, but harmony between body, mind, and behavior. Historians still debate whether Hippocrates really said, "Let food be thy medicine," but the spirit of it. It stuck with me. I didn't need another extreme diet, or a boot camp, or a magical tea blend sold by someone named Amber on Instagram. I needed a reset. One grounded in reality, age, and self-respect. I wasn't trying to be skinny. I was trying to feel alive again. So the next morning I weighed myself. It hurt. The number felt like a slap, but I wrote it down. I looked in the mirror and decided no more dodging, no more shrinking into the back row of photos, no more pretending the tight jeans were a laundry issue. This was going to be slow, messy, probably annoying, but it was mine to fix. And so began my journey to lose weight, not fast, not perfectly, but honestly, after 40. If you've ever Googled how to lose weight after 40, you've probably seen a list that reads like a hostage negotiation. Cut carbs, skip sugar, no wine, eat before 7 p.m. Intermittent fast. Don't fast, try keto. Avoid keto. Become a monk, live on celery. Okay, maybe not the last one, but it might as well be there. That was the world I wandered into after my doctor's visit. Armed with desperation and Wi-Fi, I did what any slightly panicked middle-aged person would do. I made a spreadsheet. Yes, a literal spreadsheet. One column for the diet, one for pros, one for cons, and a column titled, "Can I actually live like this?" I had a long list. Keto. Tried it. Lost 5 pounds, then lost my will to live. My body rebelled so hard I had a 3-day headache that made me question my life choices. Plus, I love fruit, so goodbye to that. Paleo. Made me feel like a caveman with a grocery bill from Whole Foods. Too much meat, not enough coffee creamer, low fat. That just meant eating twice as much because I never felt full. Let me tell you, rice cakes do not spark joy. Juice cleanses. Oh no. Once tried one for 3 days and ended up yelling at a leaf on my patio. Not proud of that moment. Every single trendy diet I tried in my 20s and 30s just didn't work the same anymore. It was like my metabolism had joined a retirement community and was now enjoying long naps and ignoring all responsibilities. The scale didn't budge. Or worse, it went up after a single salty meal. My body had turned into a high-maintenance celebrity. Temperamental, dramatic, demanding spa-level attention before it even considered shedding a pound. And the worst part, I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't trying hard enough, that I was lazy, weak, spoiled. But then I learned something interesting. Historically, weight and body size have been viewed very differently across cultures and times. In 17th century England, a round body was a sign of wealth and status. You had the means to eat well and didn't have to labor in the fields. In fact, some old paintings celebrated plump figures as ideal. Imagine a time when muffin tops were desirable. But here's the thing. Historians still debate whether these aesthetics actually correlated with better health or just social class. In other words, big didn't always mean bad, and skinny didn't always mean healthy. Still, in today's culture, we're bombarded with the message that thin equals success, youth discipline. And when you're over 40, those messages hit harder because your body's not playing by those rules anymore. So I stopped chasing size and started chasing health. That's when I met Sharon, 60 years old personal trainer, and the kind of woman who drinks green smoothies and swears at burpees. We met through a local community class, and she didn't care that I couldn't touch my toes or that I wheezed going up one flight of stairs. "You're not broken," she told me. "You're just out of sync." Out of sync. That felt right. She helped me understand something basic that no diet ever did. Food is information. And my body had been getting all the wrong messages. When I fed it sugar and processed food, it panicked. When I starved it with juice, cleanses, it held on to every ounce like a squirrel in winter. When I tried to trick it with low-fat snacks, it got confused and angry. Sharon didn't tell me to cut everything. She told me to listen. If I was starving after dinner, maybe I didn't eat enough protein. If I craved sugar at 3 p.m, maybe I was sleep deprived or emotionally drained. We started with small things: protein at breakfast, a glass of water before every meal, swapping chips for air-popped popcorn, which, fun fact, was once used as packing material. Tastes better than it sounds. And slowly, something shifted. Not the number on the scale, not yet, but my awareness, my relationship with food. I stopped seeing meals as minefields and started seeing them as fuel. I paid attention to what made me feel bloated, what made me tired, what gave me that weird 2 a.m. acid reflux that feels like your stomach is trying to text you in Morse code. And that spreadsheet, I deleted it, because this wasn't about fitting into a box anymore. It was about building a life I didn't want to escape from. Sure, I still Googled things Like, is oatmeal inflammatory at 11 p.m.? But now I was asking out of curiosity, not desperation. I didn't need a diet. I needed alignment. There was a stretch of time when I genuinely believed I had a broken metabolism. Not sluggish, not slowed by age. No, broken. Like it had fallen off the back of a truck somewhere between 39 and 40, and now only functioned when bribed with coffee or sheer panic. And the more I tried to eat better, the more my body seemed to laugh at me like, oh, you think a salad's gonna undo 15 years of late-night nachos? That's cute. It turns out my metabolism wasn't broken. It was just confused and tired, kind of like me. What I didn't realize until way too late was that stress sleep and hormones were doing their own secret sabotage behind the scenes. And let me tell you, those three have the power of a hostile takeover, like corporate raiders, but for your waistline. Let's start with stress. I always thought I handled stress well. You know, I wasn't screaming at coworkers or breaking down in the produce aisle, but my body knew better. Apparently, just thinking about my endless to-do list financial worries and why my child refuses to eat food that's too green was enough to kick my cortisol into high gear. Cortisol, in case you haven't had the pleasure, is the stress hormone that basically says, let's store fat, particularly around the middle, just in case you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Except I wasn't. I was being chased by emails. Then came sleep. Or more accurately, the lack thereof. Sleep used to be easy. I'd close my eyes and bam, gone till morning. But sometime after 40, sleep turned into a fussy toddler. I'd wake up at 2:17 a.m. for no reason, heart-racing, brain-churning. And that one song from the 90s looping in my head like a cursed music box. Sleep deprivation messes with your hunger hormones. Ghrelin, the I'm hungry, one goes up, and leptin, the I am full, one goes down. So basically you wake up and your body's like, let's eat an entire bagel factory. And then, hormones. Oh, sweet mystery of life, why didn't anyone warn me that hormones in your 40s act like they just got out of a toxic relationship? Erratic, unpredictable, and prone to drama. Estrogen, progesterone, insulin. They're all involved in the way your body stores fat, builds muscle, digests food, and even how you feel after eating. One week, I'd eat yogurt and feel fine. The next week, bloating like I'd swallowed a beach ball. Historians still debate whether early societies recognized these hormonal changes as a formal phase of life or just thought women were possessed. Based on how little we talk about it even now, I think it's still a toss-up. Anyway, it all came to a head one day when I found myself standing in front of the fridge at midnight, eating peanut butter off a spoon while crying over an animal rescue video. Not my finest moment. That's when I knew I had to stop fighting myself and start understanding myself. So I began tracking not calories but patterns. When did I sleep best? What foods made me feel good? 2 hours later. When did I crave sweets the most? Turns out I was most tempted to binge when I was emotionally depleted, especially after hard conversations or exhausting meetings. My solution: I started keeping a stash of herbal tea and low-sugar dark chocolate nearby. Not perfect, but better than inhaling a sleeve of cookies. I also started meditating. Just 10 minutes a day. Nothing fancy. Just me, my breath, and a playlist of ocean waves that sometimes made me need to pee. It wasn't instant magic, but over time I felt calmer, less reactive, more grounded. I even learned a bizarre but oddly comforting fact. In the 1800s, some doctors treated nervous conditions with long walks and baths in natural springs. Turns out fresh air and warm water really are healing. Sometimes the old ways still work. And while scientists continue to argue over whether hormone imbalances cause weight gain directly or indirectly. I stopped waiting for a lab result to give me permission to change my habits. I focused on consistency over perfection. Instead of skipping meals and then eating like a tornado at dinner, I started eating on time and choosing foods that didn't spike my blood sugar or make me feel sluggish an hour later. I made sleep a priority. No screens past 9:30 p.m. Magnesium before bed. A little lavender oil on the pillow, like I was starring in my own spa commercial. And slowly, that internal chaos started to settle. Was I still tempted by donuts in the break room? Absolutely. But I didn't feel controlled by those cravings anymore. I began to feel like I had options, tools, a plan. The best part, my energy returned not in a fireworks and drumline kind of way, but in the way where I could walk the dog, clean the house, and still have a little pep, left to dance in the kitchen like no one was watching. They were watching. My teen caught it on video. It lives forever on their phone. So yeah, the real hunger. It wasn't just for food. It was for balance, for calm, for clarity. And I finally understood weight loss after 40 isn't just a physical battle. It's a full-body negotiation. And finally, I was ready to sit at the table and listen. It began with a walk, not a heroic Rocky-style sprint up the museum stairs, just a regular slow walk around the block. I wore sneakers I hadn't touched in months, stretched my back like someone twice my age, and stepped out the front door as if entering another planet. My knees cracked, my hips whined. My lower back delivered a monologue about betrayal. But I kept moving. There was a neighbor walking their golden retriever. A teenager jogging past earbuds and clearly training for something. And there was me, sneakers squeaking, arms stiff at my sides, breathing like someone trying to blow out birthday candles from across the room. But I did it. One lap, 15 minutes, and I didn't die. That night, my body was sore, in places I didn't know. I still had muscles. But something else happened too. I slept. Like actually slept. No 2 a.m. infomercials. No tossing and turning. Just darkness and quiet. So I did it again the next day. And again. And on day 5, something wild happened. I didn't hate it. By the end of that week, I'd added 2 more blocks to my route. And by the end of that month, I wasn't just walking. I was walking with purpose. And more importantly, I was not quitting. This was a major shift. You see, I used to be what I call a fitness starter. I'd buy the cute workout clothes, download the app, and crush the first 3 days. Then I'd hit a wall, usually a literal muscle cramp, and declare the entire thing a scam. It wasn't that I lacked willpower. I lacked consistency and patience. But this time, I didn't go in with the goal of getting skinny or proving something. I just wanted to feel better. That was the real game changer. 3 weeks in, I started adding light weights. I found a pair of dusty dumbbells under my bed, probably from some other fitness phase, and started doing 5-minute strength routines from a woman on YouTube who was oddly perky for 6 a.m. She said things like, "You're doing amazing," and feel that burn, and for once, I didn't roll my eyes. Much. What I did feel, however, was stronger. Not like superhero strong. More like I can lift a grocery bag without groaning strong. And that was enough. I also discovered something very important. Movement doesn't have to hurt to count. We've been sold this idea that unless we're sweating buckets or limping afterward, it's not a real workout. But after 40, pain is not the goal. Function is. That idea goes all the way back to ancient Rome. Gladiators trained with wooden weapons before stepping into real battle, not because they were weak, but because it helped them build muscle without constant injury. It was about longevity. Historians still debate whether Roman fitness routines were more about survival or vanity, but either way, they didn't expect instant results. And neither should we. So I started treating my body like a partner instead of an obstacle. I warmed up. I cooled down. I stretched. I celebrated small wins like getting up off the floor without help or reaching that high shelf without making a noise that rhymed with oof. And one morning it hit me. I hadn't skipped a workout in over 3 weeks. That might not sound like a big deal, but for me, it was massive. Because for once, I wasn't chasing perfect. I was building consistency. And consistency, my friends, is what makes change possible. There was one day I almost quit. I'd had a horrible night, bad dreams, stiff joints, and a headache that felt like my brain was doing construction. It was raining. My socks were damp. My left knee made a sound like a creaky door hinge. Everything in me said, just skip today. But then I thought of a quote. I'd read something about showing up, even when you don't want to, being the truest form of discipline. And for some reason, it stuck. So I got dressed, cursed under my breath, and walked. Slowly, miserably. But I walked. And when I got home, I felt amazing. Not because I burned 1,000 calories, not because my abs magically appeared, but because I kept a promise to myself. I showed up. And that's what this entire journey started to become. Not a race to a number, but a collection of quiet victories. One walk, one workout, one stretch at a time. Even now, when my motivation wobbles like a jello mold on a bumpy road, I go back to that first walk, that awkward, breathy shuffle around the block. Because that's when it started. That's when I stopped quitting. And that's when I started winning. I used to see the kitchen as enemy territory, full of booby traps like tortilla chips and leftover birthday cake. It wasn't a place of creativity. It was a war zone where I waged daily battles between guilt and cravings. But once I stopped punishing myself and started focusing on feeling better, something weird happened. I started having fun in the kitchen. Now, this is coming from someone who once considered microwaving a frozen burrito meal prep. But after I ditched the crash diets and started paying attention to how food made me feel, I realized something big. I didn't hate cooking. I hated rules. The more freedom I gave myself, the better I ate. Instead of thinking, what can I cut? I started asking, what can I add? More veggies, more color, more crunch. I rediscovered the joy of slicing a perfectly ripe avocado, of roasting sweet potatoes with just the right amount of paprika, of tasting something fresh and real and thinking, whoa, that's actually good. At first, I was nervous about cooking healthy. I imagined sad little salads and steamed broccoli that tastes like wet socks. But once I gave myself permission to experiment, I realized healthy food doesn't have to be boring. Quinoa became my new best friend. I threw it into bowls with roasted veggies, grilled chicken, and a drizzle of olive oil. I learned to make smoothies that didn't taste like lawn clippings. I even made a cauliflower pizza crust that didn't fall apart on the third try. There were some fails too, of course, like the time I tried to make oat flour pancakes and ended up with something that looked and tasted like a damp coaster. But hey, no one died, except maybe my dignity. The point is, I was learning to enjoy food again. I started doing meal prep on Sundays, but not in that scary Instagram way, with 27 identical containers of chicken and broccoli. Mine was more casual, chopping veggies ahead of time, cooking a big pot of chili, portioning out yogurt with berries. I called it lazy prep, and it worked. There's something oddly comforting about opening your fridge and seeing options you actually want to eat. No panic, no, I'll just order takeout. just real food ready when I needed it. It also helped to stop demonizing certain foods. I didn't ban carbs or sugar or cheese. I just chose when to enjoy them. A square of dark chocolate after dinner felt indulgent, but didn't wreck my progress. A slice of pizza on Friday night didn't turn into a weekend spiral. I wasn't cheating, I was living, and my body responded. I felt lighter, not just on the scale, but in my skin. No more mid-afternoon crashes. No more belly bloat that made me unbutton my jeans halfway through the day. No more guilt spirals every time I looked at a menu. I started noticing flavors again. The zing of fresh lemon, the earthy sweetness of roasted carrots, the magic of cinnamon on baked apples. It was like my taste buds woke up after a long nap. Even my grocery list changed. Before chips, soda, instant noodles, frozen pizza. After Greek yogurt, mixed greens, salmon, avocado, steel-cut oats. Okay, still frozen pizza, but the good kind. I also started paying attention to portion size, something I hadn't done since the early 2000s, when every diet book screamed measuring cups at me. But instead of obsessing, I used a simple rule: start small. If I was still hungry after one serving, I'd wait 5 minutes, then decide. Most of the time, I didn't need more. There's this old historical tidbit I love in Okinawa, Japan, where people are famously long-lived. They practice something called hara hachi bu, which means eat until you're 80% full. Historians still debate whether this single practice explains their health, or if it's the whole lifestyle. But either way, it stuck with me. So I tried it, and it worked. I stopped walking away from the table feeling stuffed. I started trusting that I could eat again later if I needed to. That food wasn't going anywhere. That I wasn't on a countdown timer to eat everything in sight before it didn't count. I also got a little weird in a good way with flavor. I bought spices I couldn't pronounce. I used tahini. I zested lemons. I roasted garlic until it smelled like heaven. I made overnight oats in mason jars and pretended I was a Pinterest influencer. I wasn't, obviously, but I was trying, and that felt good. Food became something I looked forward to. And I can't emphasize this enough. It stopped being about control. It started being about care. Not punishment, but nourishment. Because when you turn 40, your body isn't asking for punishment. It's asking for respect. It's asking you to listen, to feed it what makes it feel good, to stop feeding it out of boredom or anxiety or habit, to slow down, to chew, to savor. And for the first time in years, I did, not because a plan told me to, but because I finally realized food wasn't the enemy. It was the bridge between who I was and who I wanted to become. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. The scale is a dirty liar. It whispers false promises. It delivers judgment in digital numbers. And it almost ruined my progress more than once. In the beginning, I stepped on the scale every morning. Like it was my boss. Like it had the final say on whether I was allowed to feel proud. If the number went down, instant joy. If it stayed the same or worse, went up soul-crushing despair, usually followed by a questionable snack. It took me a long time to admit that this little machine was not a reliable narrator of my journey. Because while that number didn't budge for almost 2 weeks, something else did. One afternoon, I went to zip up a pair of jeans I hadn't worn in months. I braced myself for the usual routine, the tug, the hop, the deep inhale. But then, they zipped. No struggle, no tears, no laying down on the bed and saying a prayer to the denim gods. That was the moment I realized I'd been measuring the wrong thing. The real signs of progress weren't on the scale. They were in my life. I could climb stairs without feeling like I needed a paramedic. I could carry groceries into the house in one trip. My skin looked better. My mood was more stable. I had energy. And wildest of all, I laughed more. I also stopped avoiding mirrors. I no longer averted my eyes in dressing rooms. I caught glimpses of myself and thought, hey, that's me, and I look okay. But the scale, still stubborn, still rude, so I moved it. Literally, I put it in the closet, out of sight, out of power. Instead, I focused on non-scale victories. NSVs, as they're sometimes called. Here are a few of mine. My rings fit again. I no longer needed to unbutton my jeans after dinner. I could sit cross-legged on the floor without groaning like a cartoon grandpa. I had fewer sugar cravings. I felt light even if I wasn't lighter. There's a historical anecdote I love about corsets in the Victorian era. Women would tie themselves into those rib-crushing garments for the illusion of a tiny waist, even though they couldn't breathe properly. Historians still argue whether it was a beauty trend, a social expectation, or just self-inflicted torture. Either way, it was all about appearance, not health. That hit home for me, because for years I'd been mentally corseting myself, focusing on the number instead of how I felt. So I ditched the number game. That doesn't mean I stopped tracking progress. I just redefined it. I started a journal, not a food log, a feelings log. Every evening, I'd jot down how I felt physically, what gave me energy, what drained me. One thing I was proud of, it sounds cheesy. Maybe it was, but it worked. I began to see patterns. I noticed that when I slept well, I craved less junk. That movement made me calmer. That eating protein in the morning kept me from raiding the pantry at 9 p.m. And then came the moment that still makes me smile. I went out with friends one weekend. Nothing fancy, just brunch and some window shopping. I wore a pair of black jeans and a simple blouse. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't tugging at my clothes or fidgeting in my seat. I felt comfortable in my body. Someone snapped a picture of us laughing on a bench. Later that night, they posted it. I saw it, and instead of cringing, I smiled. That was new, because that smile, that glow, that wasn't from weight loss. That was from liberation. I had stopped tying my self-worth to the scale, and it changed everything. Now, don't get me wrong. There were still hard days, hormonal bloat, water retention. That one time, I ate an entire basket of chips at a Mexican restaurant and felt like a human balloon. But those moments didn't define me anymore. The scale had lost its throne, and my jeans became the truth tellers. They didn't lie. They didn't fluctuate overnight. They didn't judge. They just fit, or didn't. Simple as that. And as silly as it sounds, those jeans gave me more confidence than any number ever had. Because now, when someone asks me how much weight I lost, I don't give them a number. I tell them the truth. I lost the heaviness in my body, sure. But more than that, I lost the weight of shame, the weight of guilt, the weight of believing I wasn't enough, and that my friend is the kind of weight loss that changes everything. There's this moment that sneaks up on you. You don't see it coming. You don't plan for it. It just arrives. I was standing in my kitchen. Yes, the same kitchen that once felt like a battlefield sipping my morning coffee, when I realized something was different. Not dramatic, not flashy, just quietly different. I didn't feel like I was on a diet. I didn't feel like I was working at it anymore. It all just felt normal. It was the first time in years that eating well, moving my body, sleeping enough, and saying no to things that drained me didn't feel like a checklist or a punishment. It felt like me. That morning, I danced. I kid you not. I danced in my kitchen to an old song from the 90s. No one was watching except the dog, who looked mildly concerned. But I danced because I had energy. Because my body didn't ache. Because I could. It was like my body, and I had called a truce. After years of war, of yo-yo diets, and guilt trips, and scale-induced shame, we'd finally agreed to be teammates. And the beautiful thing, it had nothing to do with perfection. I still had stretch marks, still had days where my knees cracked louder than bubble wrap, still had a soft belly that refused to disappear. But I wasn't angry about it anymore. I wasn't trying to fix myself. I was just living. And the ease, it came from the habits. The ones that used to feel like torture. The ones that once felt impossible. I realized I'd built a rhythm, like brushing my teeth or locking the door, eating well, and moving daily had become automatic. Not always exciting, not always Instagram-worthy, but steady, grounding, mine. Here's a fun historical fact for you. In ancient China, doctors were paid only when their patients stayed healthy. If someone got sick, payment paused. Health was the job, not recovery prevention. Historians still debate whether that model could ever work today, but the concept stuck with me. It wasn't about bouncing back. It was about staying well. And for the first time, I saw what that looked like in my own life. I could walk without needing recovery. I could go to dinner with friends and order what I wanted. No stress, no. I'll start again tomorrow. I could shop for clothes without mentally calculating which ones might hide my stomach best. I had energy, confidence, even peace. And then something else happened. People started to notice. Not the weight loss, that came later, but the shift. You look different, they'd say. Happier, lighter, like yourself again. And that's what it was. I was becoming myself again. Or maybe for the first time. I started helping friends, sharing tips, swapping recipes, laughing about my failed zucchini noodles and celebrating their wins. We weren't competing. We were building a new kind of community, one based on support, not shame. There's this idea that after 40, everything slows down, that it's too late, that our best years are behind us. But I'm telling you, that's a lie. Because this is when it started to get good. My body wasn't a burden. It was a blessing. One that carried me, protected me, adapted with me. Even when I didn't treat it well, it showed up. And now I was finally showing up for it too. The best part, I stopped chasing the end. There's no final weight, no finish line, just daily choices, daily grace, daily reminders that health isn't a destination, it's a relationship. One where you learn, forgive, try again. And then out of nowhere, you'll wake up one day and realize this isn't hard anymore. This is you. I remember the moment I knew this journey had changed my life for good. It wasn't a dramatic before and after photo. It wasn't a standing ovation. It wasn't some big number on the scale or a pair of jeans finally fitting. It was the day I caught my reflection in a store window and smiled. Not because I looked hot or young or whatever magazine word we're supposed to aim for. I smiled because I looked like me, at peace, present, comfortable in my own skin for the first time in decades. The path here hadn't been perfect. I'd fumbled, eaten the wrong things, skipped workouts, had late-night breakdowns over stress or hormones or just plain exhaustion. But none of that erased the progress. Because real change isn't about being perfect. It's about returning. Coming back to yourself again and again, no matter how far you drift. And I always came back. By now, my habits were just part of life. I prepped my lunches without overthinking it. I chose walks over scrolling. I paused before stress eating and asked, do I actually need this, or do I need rest? That little pause changed everything. I'd even started teaching. Nothing official, just a few neighbors who wanted to learn what I'd done. We'd meet once a week, share meals, go for group walks. We called it the 40 Plus Reset Club. Not the catchiest name, but it stuck. It wasn't about dropping weight fast. It was about learning to live well. One of the women in the group told me I thought it was too late for me, but watching you, it made me think maybe it's not. And that's when it hit me. This is what health is for. It's not just about feeling good alone. It's about becoming someone who helps others feel good too. I started sleeping better. Not because I had to, but because my body craved it. I started moving in ways that brought me joy. Not just lifting weights or walking, but dancing, hiking, swimming. Movement became play again. Even my relationship with food softened. I still had indulgences, ice cream on hot summer nights, a glass of wine with friends, but they didn't spiral. They were part of a full life. No guilt, just balance. There's a phrase from ancient Sanskrit I stumbled across in a meditation app, Santosh, meaning contentment. Historians still debate how it fits into different branches of yogic philosophy, but I like to think of it as enoughness, not striving, not chasing, just being, whole, settled, grateful. And that's where I landed. I stopped comparing myself to the 25-year-old me. Stopped mourning the body I used to have, or the one I thought I should have. Instead, I celebrated the one I did have. Wiser, stronger, more compassionate, and yeah, I lost weight. My clothes fit differently. My doctor high-fived me at my next checkup. But more importantly, I gained freedom. Freedom from self-loathing. Freedom from the all-or-nothing cycle. Freedom from trying to fix a body that was never broken. Now I have more energy for what really matters. Family dinners, Sunday morning walks, laughing until my stomach hurts, living in this body right now, not 10 pounds from now. And here's the thing, I'm not done. This isn't a grand finale. It's a new rhythm. Some days, I still mess up. Eat too fast, skip a workout, forget to breathe deeply. But those days don't undo me. They remind me I'm human. And being human means beginning again as many times as it takes. So, if you're over 40 and feeling like it's too late, like your best health is behind you, let me gently say, it's not. You are not too old, not too broken, not too far gone. You are just one walk, one meal, one decision away from starting again. And when you do, I'll be right here cheering you on. Because this isn't just my story, it's yours too. So now let's slow everything down. Let's dim the lights a bit. Loosen the tension in your shoulders. Breathe out longer than before. You've come with me through a story that might have felt familiar. Maybe you saw glimpses of your own habits, struggles, little victories. Maybe you saw your future self quietly rising, choosing again, softer, this time, kinder, this time. That's the gift of this season of life. We no longer have to chase. We don't need to prove anything to the mirror, to the scale, to the world. What we need instead is care, rhythm, a return to the body that's always been trying to speak to us. Whispering, waiting. Let yourself feel proud, not because you arrived at perfection, but because you didn't give up when it was messy, confusing, or hard. Let yourself feel light, not from numbers lost, but from burdens lifted. From self-talk that doesn't hurt. From choices that heal. And tonight, or tomorrow morning, or whenever your next meal, your next walk, your next breath finds you, pause. Thank your body. Thank your spirit for holding on. This journey isn't about looking a certain way. It's about living more fully, more freely, more awake. No matter your starting point, you belong in this process. Not because you need to be fixed, but because you deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel alive. So here's to you, to every quiet decision, no one clapped for, to every step you took, even when it hurt, to the you that's still becoming. You're not behind, you're right on time. And I'm so glad you're here.